Welcome, everybody, and we are going to talk about the different theories for the David Crowley case. I have three people here join with me. I want to say hi to Sophia.
Hello, everybody.
Thanks for joining us again. I want to say hi to Christy, who's joined us here. Hey, Christy.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate that. And I want to say hi to Stephanie, who is also here.
Hi.
Greetings. So we're just gonna be chatting about the different theories, the different things that are going on. Let's go ahead and try to verify that we're even live right now. We could just be talking to each other. That's always possible.
Waiting for the gray stage.
Yeah, is it live?
So
No, I don't think
that's
we're live. Huh?
waiting.
Let me see.
Wow, hold on. Yeah, we are live.
We are live? Okay. Yay. Funny, I can't even see that we're live on my own channel. That's YouTube. I don't want to get into a whole YouTube rant here, but they are just not my buddies. We are having it out. Okay,
You're not
great.
the only one. I can tell you that right now. A lot of the people who I follow on YouTube have been having major issues.
Okay, interesting. Well, apparently we have this chat room, but everybody in that chat room is out of luck because we are in a different chat room, so I can see that as well. So Sophia, maybe you can just let people know in that chat that it looks like this started in a different stream. So if everybody in the other chat room can move up over here, that would be great. We do have
I
Butterfly
had no idea
Kisses.
everybody was in that stream.
Yeah, we have Butterfly Kisses and Pansy Wilson, who has joined us in this chat. Thank you for that. I'm not sure why the other one didn't open up. It's just the way YouTube and my relationship has been going as of late. We're not on the best of terms, but that's all right. So other people will be filtering in over here to this one. Okay, good. So Pansy noticed and switched over. Excellent. So we got a lot of things to talk about, a lot of different theories. Let's take a quick look at the poll here. Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group. Right now, it looks like there are 48 people who have voted that the Crowleys were killed by someone they knew. We then have 12 people that have voted David and family were killed as a result of a government conspiracy. And then we have 10 people who voted for friends were jealous and took matters into their own hands. 3 people for we don't know and we'll never know. So screw everyone. They are still alive. And so this says 2 other people. That must mean that there were 3 people. They're still alive. That's an interesting one. And then we have David and Kamel had a pact to kill themselves and their daughter. There are 3 people open to that possibility. 3 people are also open to the possibility that more or one motive was in play, jealousy, money, and the people that committed the crimes were involved in some form of the occult. 2 people voted for Kamel's family actually murdered them. 1 person is open to the possibility that the deaths were tied to David's military days, and then 1 person is open to the possibility that David and family were killed by someone they knew as a result of a conspiracy. You could almost combine this one with the top 2, and they kind of might all fall into the same thing. So 1 and 2 might even be listed as 1. Now this doesn't necessarily mean that these people who voted for it are saying that that is exactly what happened. This just shows that this is what they are considering. And you can see by this poll, just based on the people that took this poll, what they are strongly considering. All right, so we're getting more people here who have made it. It's been hard. Like I said, YouTube is just having one of those days. So those are all of the theory. Those are the main theories here. So we're gonna go through some of those as well. Let me go back to this PowerPoint that Sophia helped create here. When I say help create, I mean did everything. All I did was open it and take credit for it. So let's go ahead and talk about this. Let's go around the table here, and then if anybody in the chat has anything they want to say about this, please feel free. This one got the most votes. The Crowleys were killed by someone they knew. So, why do you guys think that the Crowleys were killed by someone they knew? Or why do you think that that got the most votes? Now, let me just say, again, we are not saying that these things are facts. These are the angles. These are the things that people are looking at that they consider to be a possible truth. So,
But it's pure speculation on everyone's part.
correct. Correct. And when we talk about pure speculation, we have to include what the police said because that is also pure speculation. So, because of that, any other theory is just as relevant because those floodgates have been opened because the police failed to prove that David Crowley is guilty. Let's start there. Is anybody open to the fact that David Crowley could be guilty?
No, not unless I saw actual solid proof.
Okay. Stephanie?
I am open to it. If somebody could give me solid proof that he did this, I would accept that.
And Christy?
All we need is the proof.
Well, I don't think so because I haven't seen solid proof, and with the evidence that is there, I don't see solid proof with all of the inconsistencies. I mean, like I have said the entire time, the whole thing with the gun being by his left hand and the entrance wound being on the right side of his head, and with the way he would have had to shoot himself, I just don't buy it. I just don't see how it's possible.
And it sounds like in the chat room, it sounds like Patty also agrees with that. Go ahead, Sophia.
Somebody would have had to been in that house before the police were there to have moved his body for him to have killed himself. And Camille could not have shot herself 3 times. I mean, that's just not possible. Twice in the back of the head, once possibly maybe the hands, I don't know. But there's 3 bullets directly tied to her, so I just don't see it.
Yeah, that's the thing. There would have to be either, like you said, the police would have had to have moved their bodies around and completely got the reports wrong about how the bodies actually were when it occurred, or someone else was involved and moved the bodies around in order for the gun to be by his left hand and for the entrance wound to be in the right side of his head, and the gun to be so conveniently placed where it was placed and the way he was laying. I mean, I hate to harp on this because I talk about this every time we talk, but I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So, and that proof has got to be pretty solid for me to be able to change my mind. But then that opens up a whole nother can of worms. Okay, if there is solid proof, then who moved his body before the police were in the house?
Great point. I'm glad you covered that right there, because
Yes.
and if the bodies were taken into that house, why would they move them? Why would they move the bodies and then put them where the police found them? Right. So does this kind of help discount some of that theory, or maybe let's just say maybe throw shade into that theory that the bodies were killed somewhere else and then were planted in this house? Because at that point they would have had to have been planted twice, right? Or am I missing something here?
Nope, that's right. They would have had to been staged twice.
And that seems hard.
Impossible.
It does seem impossible. It seems unnecessary, but as many people have pointed out, a lot of the things that we're seeing in this case are also unnecessary. It's overkill.
Yeah.
Okay, David and family were killed. Or anybody have anything else about number one? 48 votes. I mean, it seems like I thought that the government would probably win, but no. Unless maybe they knew people in the government. I don't know. Anything else on number one before we move on? Anybody in the chat room have anything that they'd like us to add here about the number one vote, 48 votes, that the Crowleys were killed by someone that they knew?
I think they were killed by somebody they knew based on the fact that all the speculation of the last few months of their life was that they were isolating themselves from everybody. They were alienating themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it had to be somebody they knew, because it would have had to have been somebody he would have let in the house. Him or Kamel would have let in the house, since there was, as the reports say, no forced entry.
Right.
So that was one of the biggest things to me, was because the police specifically said there was no forced entry, that said to me they had to have known the person who did this. And the two unknowns of DNA that was never tested at all.
Mm-hmm.
That tells me that somebody else was in that house.
Do you think whoever, if this theory, just going by this theory, looking at this theory, when we say the Crowleys, do we include their family dog? Would the dog have had to known this person and been okay with this person, been comfortable with this person or persons?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But I also think that when things went sideways, poor Paleo was scared.
I think
And
he was
abandoned head.
kenneled.
Say it again?
That's a good theory, too.
I think he was locked in the kennel.
In the living room, or do you think somewhere else?
I'm not sure. But I just know that from having dogs as long as I've had them, and it doesn't matter how docile the animal can be, if they sense any kind of aggression or anything, they really sense it. And they'll go after a person. And so I think if there was any kind of, turmoil or upset or anything going on, that he would have become aggressive with whoever it was. And so they would have had to have forced them to lock him up, or they would have locked him up or something, because he would have attacked. It doesn't matter if he knew him. If they had to become aggressive, I think my opinion is that he would have attacked, because I've had the most passive animals do that when people have just slightly raised their voice at me.
Should he have
But
barked?
he would have had to been forced into that kennel, though. He very possibly could have bit whoever forced him in there.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Or
And we wouldn't know anything about that.
they could have forced either David or Camille to put him in there.
Yeah, that's true.
At some kind of threat. You either put him in there, or I'm going to hurt him or kill him.
Interesting.
The only reason why I think that he might have ran off was because of the fact that he wasn't killed.
I
But-
find that very strange too.
Why is that?
Well, I find it strange what I mean as far as him not being killed is that's another thing that makes me think that David didn't do this, because as much as David loved that dog, and even other people have, in talking about David, family members have even expressed how much he loved that dog. So if he loved that dog that much, and he was spoken about saying that he looked at that dog like a member of his family, if he loved him so much and he looked at him as a member of his family, if they had a pact, or if he was going to go crazy and kill everyone that he loved that was closest to him, why didn't he kill Paleo too?
Hmm. Yep. I'm not a dog owner. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I wouldn't think he would want someone else raising his dog. I think that he would want him, because we do know that he at least has some kind of spirituality to himself. So you would think he would want him with them. That's at least
Not
what
only
my-
that, but it's if he's, willing to kill his wife and his daughter and then himself, what's stopping him from shooting the dog? Like, if he's just so crazy at this point that he's willing to end 3 lives, why leave the dog alive? Doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
If it was like his family member, the dog would have gone with him too.
I would think so.
The other case that I looked into, that was in Apple Valley, which was a murder-suicide. They had 2 cats, and both of those were left alive. But this was a true snapped situation where something just suddenly happened and the wife was killed. And by the way, she had lifted up her hands to block the bullet. And so it went through her hand and traveled up her arm. Which, that's why I kind of think that Camille very possibly could have lost her hands that way. Possibly. And, but those cats were left alive. He shot himself almost immediately after he had killed her.
It's interesting you mention the hand, Sophia, because that other case that I sent you,
Mm-hmm.
what's her name? Oh, I can't think of her name now. The movie they did about her was Star 80. She was a centerfold for Playboy, and she was shot with a shotgun, and her fingers were shot off because she held her hand up in a defensive manner. Sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to. That was another parallel that I saw with that.
Interesting. Well, in that other case, didn't they also miss a couple bullets? At least one bullet when they left the house.
Yes, it was in the exercise machine, and when the crime scene team was there cleaning afterwards, they moved it and it fell out.
All right, I'm not going to touch that one. I would like to know, well, I did have one comment here, but Shiwa also says, what did she say? She made a good point here. She says, it looks like they were dumped there. Is that what it looks like? That the bodies were just dumped in
Yeah,
the Crowley
it
house?
does. It does. For me, it does, and that's the feeling that I've had ever since I saw the photo
Mm-hmm.
was that Camille and Ronnie were just dumped onto the carpet. But for David, that he was dragged and posed.
Interesting. Would that be due to time? Just because they didn't have much time, so they got to just dump them? And I mean, it seems like with a lot of the stuff, a lot of time would have had to have gone into everything in the whole
Mhm.
house, especially in the bedroom, or not in the bedroom, in the office room. And then, of course, that wall, I don't know if anybody's ever timed it or anything, but how long would it take a person to take somebody's blood, first of all, take out the blood from their body, and then write on that wall? How much time, even if you were a pro at it, seems like you'd take a lot of time, and you would have to be very comfortable that nobody was going to catch you, that nobody was ever going to walk in on you or anything like that. You'd have to know that area, the neighborhood. You'd have to have scouted that area out. There seems like there's a lot into it, and at any time that dog should be barking. I'm not a big dog person, and one of the reasons is because they're very loud. I know they're very smart and they're very loyal, but they are very loud. And if a dog is in that house for 3 weeks, I would assume within a couple days, if not a couple hours, that dog is going to be crying. It's going to try to find somebody. But yet, for 3 weeks, even with people dropping off presents, nobody hears that dog until January 17th. Does that seem strange to anyone else?
Yes, that's
Well,
why I agree with the staging, because if I read somewhere, I can't find where, I've been trying to go back through all the files and everything, but I read somewhere, I think, that the basement was soundproofed. So if paleo was, say, put down there,
Yep.
somebody who knew the family would know that that's soundproofed, so that's a safe place to keep the dog where nobody would hear it. And then as far as like dragging them, the way Randy's clothes were and the way David's clothes were are what happens when your body is dragged, and the way Kamel was in that picture looks like she was just like dropped there, just like dumped there and not even thought about after that. But then as far as did everybody see Dan's video he did?
Yes.
I think it was
Mhm.
last week,
Mhm.
where he does the visual with the bowl, where the time it would take to, if he was like getting back down on the floor to get some blood on his hand and climb back up on the couch and do a letter on the wall, that would take a lot of time. So there really has to be a lot of planning going into this, because there was no bowl. There was no bowl, there was no gloves, there was no indication of her blood being collected anywhere, except for the fact that, how did it get on the wall? How did they collect it to write on the wall? Whoever, whether it was David or somebody else, whoever did that clearly had to have taken some object with the blood in it and held it up there with them while they were writing on the wall, because there's no trails back and forth.
Where did the blood come from? I know it came from his wife, but from where? From where? Because
Right.
all of her upper, the only thing that's really missing are her hands and part of her head. Everything else is intact. The organs, from the I think from the neck up, yeah, all that soft tissue, all that stuff's gone too. But where is all of this
The
blood?
larynx, the hyoid bone, all that was missing. Like
Right.
in her neck, into her face was missing.
Is it curious that because it's so it's so clean? If it was David, I would think it would be more messy, right?
If it was David, he had to have cleaned up before he chopped off his own hand and shot himself.
Well, and why would he dispose of whatever he used to collect blood?
That's a great point.
The other thing is something that I don't think I've ever mentioned is if Paleo had been out that entire time. If you look at the pictures, there's these short tables, almost like shelves in front of the front window. There's all kinds of like decorations and stuff on those tables. Not one thing is knocked over. Everything on that table is sitting up perfectly. And yet, supposedly that dog was jumping around in the window and barking and going crazy and had free reign of this house the entire time, and yet he never once jumped on those shelves that were short enough for him to jump up on and knock things over. That doesn't make any sense.
I just don't believe that part of the story. And because of that fact, the little trinkets on those little bookcases weren't knocked over. And let me tell you, him just banging against it probably would have knocked one of those bookcases completely over. They weren't as very sturdy as a lot of
there was,
think.
if you look, sorry to interrupt, if you look in the photos of it, it's like basically that whole wall there where you can see part of the rug, the wood floor, the bookshelves, and then the window. And if you look to the left of it, the left bookshelf, under there's like a little red square box that I've always wondered, every time I go through the pictures, I see that little box under the shelf. And it doesn't make sense how that got there, because if, as you guys said, there was a struggle, everything else would be off that shelf or knocked over on it.
Mhm.
I pull that
Yeah.
up.
When the other thing that I was going to say, as far as like the bodies being dumped there and everything, I mean, that would make sense if they were somewhere else and they had decomposed for some time before they were dumped there. Because the scenario I was going through in my head is if they had been killed somewhere else and they had started decomposing I haven't ever personally done it, but I've heard about it. I mean, the odor is so strong. So I don't think anyone that is moving these bodies is really going to like want to pull the bodies towards themselves to try and like place them somewhere. I think they're going to kind of try and keep them more like at arm's length and just drop them. And I kind of wondered, I know I talked to Dan and Sophia a little bit about it, but I was just kind of wondering if that could possibly have something to do with Ronnie's arm coming off. If she had already gone into advanced stages of decomposition and someone tried to grab her by her arm to move her, to stage her.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Going, where's the arm though? But I mean, the same thing could have happened with the hands, but I don't see how the hands would have the tearing. And plus, the arm had the tearing too supposedly from the scavenging. So I don't know. I don't know if it would tear, or we would have to talk to a medical examiner to ask them how it would come off because there was noted tearing.
Okay, I got the image up there, and I don't know if that's where is this red box that you were talking about? I mean, one of the weird things I guess was this little blue tubing, because at some point at first that blue tubing is standing up, and then in most of the pictures after that it's down, which just all that shows is how easy that this blue tube could have fell down. So again, it just goes back to the point. If this blue tube was standing up while the dog was in that house, it's really hard to think that the dog would attack that front window without knocking that thing over. It's not to say that it's impossible. Looking at some of these books and on the shelf, some of it does kind of look like it's been moved, but yet then I compare that to my bookshelves here, and I have books that are leaning this same way too. So I don't know.
And
Okay,
look
so
at
it's
the little
not
trinket
this
at the very top.
picture.
Mhm.
If you see those little trinkets up there, I mean, the dog would have surely knocked those over. Banging up
Right,
against
jumping
it.
up at the window.
Right.
And also look at the bookcases. These are not sturdy, hardcore bookcases. Just one good bang against them, and they would have gone over, unless they were bolted into that wall. But I don't see that.
Yeah, I don't either. Let me see.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So it's not this picture where you can see that little present on the floor.
Okay. I gotta find which one it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing too.
I wonder if
going
it's
through.
it's not this one, BCA 5104. I don't think it's that one, because I think you're looking more towards where the Christmas tree is, where you're talking about.
No, it like you could see the two bookshelves right underneath that window there.
Okay.
So it. Oh wow, you're going really fast.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
If you have
That's
the number, we can find it. BCA 4915. But this shows the two bookcases.
Yeah.
This one.
Zoom
okay.
in
Okay.
in the left corner, up by kind of where the 30 is, the 30 marker.
Let me know if I should go up or down. It's a little delayed on your side, I'm sure, but okay.
I don't see it in those. It was underneath a bookshelf.
Okay.
You know, I think I might know which photo you're talking about, and it might not be in the Dropbox photos.
Why not? All of them should be there.
Because it's the photo of the bodies.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Now there is something red underneath that bookcase.
Yeah, I remember something being under there, but I don't remember what it. I think it was like a piece of a. I want to say a piece of a present, or a piece of a broken
Ornament.
ornament or something like that. Yeah. Let me see.
I don't know. It kind of looks like a chewy, like a dog chewy or something.
Mm-hmm. You can see
But I don't
something
know,
kind of
it's-
in this little corner there, but
This is the photo of the rug being flipped back. You could see part of
No.
the bookcases. This is just one of them.
okay. In the BCA or the AVPD?
I don't have the number on it.
So the problem with these
I'm gonna
thumbnails
go
is
look. Hold on.
okay. Yeah, these thumbnails don't show me everything, so but that blue tubing I think is probably the best proof that shows that, how easy it would have been for the dog to have knocked that. bookcase over or anything like that, because at some point that thing fell, and there was no reason for it to actually fall unless somebody accidentally bumped it, or if they were swabbing and there was no swabbing in that area. Well, item 31, I guess. So maybe while they were swabbing that or something, it fell. But it seems a little far fetched. So. Let's see.
Well, with it being in such close proximity to where David was supposedly shut, why isn't there any blood splatter on the windows?
There is on that, on the light switch next to that window.
Yeah.
That might be it.
But it doesn't go further over, does it?
It might have gone on the Christmas tree. That was my guess, because of where the Christmas tree was.
Why they didn't take the tree? I've always wondered that.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. That's a great point. But here in BCA 4452, you can clearly see that the tube is standing, and yes, it's an ornament is what it is. That's behind that. So that's where the package is, right there. But that was an ornament.
So that
Christmas
tubing
ornament.
was originally standing when the officers walked in.
Right.
Because it's also standing in the photo with the bodies.
Right, and so why would that all of a sudden fall? I don't think they purposely, made it fall, right? That doesn't make any sense. But at some point, that thing falls. So unless...
Yeah, this picture you're on right now,
yeah,
you can see it behind that blue tubing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little red box with a green bow on top.
Yep, and that's probably from the Christmas tree. And that's another interesting thing, too, is that there are a lot of these things that are from that Christmas tree that look like somebody purposely took them off of the Christmas tree for whatever reason, surrounded by the Quran pages. And you can see there are a lot more than are actually mentioned, because not every Quran page that was found was given a item number. Only I think 2 or 3 of them were. That's it. But they are everywhere too. So just putting that out there. All right.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Okay. The little lemur here in the corner. That's a stuffed animal there. So let's see. Anything else on that? Let me check the chat room and then we can move on here. Patty asks, why were the curtains left open? I think that's another interesting question, because if you're going to do all this, why leave them open? But I don't know. Shiv says, and the blood on the recliner matches the line of hair on the back of recliner, like if Kamel was sitting in a chair and the head was stuck. That's interesting too. Yeah, Patty says, Judy says they were always closed. The curtains were always closed. So that's an interesting thing, because when David Crowley and Brent, the guy who lived across the street, Brett, David's curtains were open then too. So I don't know.
So that would go back to the staging theory, because if the windows were always closed, who opened them?
Right.
Surely Paleo couldn't have opened them.
Yeah, because didn't a man across the street actually look out his window and look across and see a male standing in the window?
Yes.
At some point?
Yeah. He saw David, and that was on Christmas Eve. That was about around 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve. And what's weird is if you look at where Brett would have been, and where David would have been, it's not as close as you might think. So maybe he's got 20/20 vision, 25/25 vision or something. I don't know. It's an interesting one. And then, of course, that's the same guy who later the police were told when they went back to question Brett to follow up, they were told that he was no longer living there, which might or might not be true. And, of course, they never follow up on that either. So
That seems suspicious in itself, though.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. If there were, she says, if there were blood spatter, they would have notated or marked it on the window curtain and the floor. And no blood on blue tube. That's interesting too. Yeah, I didn't see any blood on that blue tube. Just on that south wall, next to the light switch. That's really it. That's the only one that is noted. And it was interesting because I thought, okay, well they noted one, so that means that there is only one, one little spot. But when you zoom in, you can clearly see that there is a lot of blood spots on that south window. So I don't know why maybe they only needed one, I guess. Trying to save a penny.
Well, if it's on the window, why didn't they do the samples? They took samples from everything else. Just like they didn't take samples off of the curtain.
Right.
Where are the markers for the blood spatter on the window?
There is one. I'm going to get to that here.
And just like the couch, they should have taken blood samples from the couch too.
Right. Let's get to the light switch. Okay, BCA 4941 shows it backed up. Then when you zoom in, I think it's this one here. So when you kind of zoom in, it's item number 33. And you can see when you zoom in, there's blood here. There's blood on the light switch right there. Tiny drops, but they are all over that wall. Maybe they took this one because it was the biggest one, but they are definitely there. So with that, could it be possible that there was blood on these curtains, that there was blood on those books, that there was blood all here? It's just the camera did not pick it up. I mean, you can even see blood down here in the corner here. Maybe
they should have taken samples. They took samples from all the other blood.
There might even be blood right here. Hard to tell with what I have here, but I think there's a lot more blood than you can really see at first glance. But you could almost judge the trajectory, right, of where David was shot by this. Maybe this should help. Look how low that is.
I think we need to go back and take a look at that gun.
At this
gun?
gun?
Can you please go back?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just sitting there. It's not boxed, nothing.
Right.
It's not even like, it's just leaning.
It's tilted. Yeah. Yeah, and this is after they started itemizing things, definitely. So this must have been after they photographed this gun on that floor. Would have had to have been way after that. And of course, this would be for safety reasons, right? Because later on they do box it up, and later on they do add tie wraps to it. So at this point, they pretty much have everything they need from that gun. I don't know if the gun should have even really been moved, right? Maybe that's the big thing. And why move it here? Go ahead.
You're just going to haphazardly put it on there? You're not even going to put it...
Like in a bag or anything. It's just like, oh, hey, here's the gun. Let's toss it up here out of the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very irked
no, you're
by
right.
this. I mean, it's not even straight.
No, you're absolutely right. That is definitely off, because I didn't even notice that was there.
It's just chilling.
I'm extremely.
Peekaboo.
It's gravity.
I
Anti-gravity.
guess that's
Oh my gosh.
lesson.
My OCD is really coming out right now. I'm starting to feel anxiety. Fix it, folks.
Patty makes a really good point. She says there is no way that the curtains would be behind the bookshelves. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could fold them over, right? But it is kind of a weird place. That's an interesting point. Thanks, Patty. If I can get back to one of those photos that shows them all. And yeah, the bookcase is kind of deep in there. But, I can zoom in on the blue tube for sure, if that's what we want to do here. She-Wolf is asking about that. Which one? Because there are a few here, and this is after it drops. So that's the other thing. We don't really have a good one that we could zoom in on while it's standing up, I guess. But really, there should be blood all over here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. No, not that. Let's go here. Nothing, no blood on that one. No, I don't remember seeing any blood or anything like that on that blue tube. This would be the best one, but again, once it falls, it falls pretty straight too, actually, now that I think about it.
Thinking that it might be a yoga mat.
Yeah. I used to use this for my back when I had really bad back problems. You put this on your back and it just feels great. So maybe that's what they used it for too. I don't know. But I don't know. Yeah, no blood there as far as we can tell.
No, and it's not on the white pane that outlines the window.
Mm-hmm.
The window seal.
Right. Yeah, I didn't see any there. Maybe towards the furthest left side. Maybe there might have been, but I couldn't tell if it was dirt or blood. Although now looking at this one again, BCA 4920. I wonder if this might be. I can't tell if that's blood. No, that looks like the nails in the hardwood floor. I don't know. Maybe we should help the Apple Valley Police get some better cameras for the future. I mean, there's a lot of blood on this Quran page for sure. So somebody's walking around there with bloody hands. Can we at least assume that the Quran was ripped up after the blood was written on that wall? Would that be safe, or would I be a conspiracy
I
theorist?
think so. We're already conspiracy theorists.
It's true. We crossed that Rubicon a long time ago. Sure.
Yeah, we crossed that road when we said, I don't think David did this.
Right.
That's where you cross over from being a logical thinking person to a conspiracy theorist, apparently.
Apparently, yeah, which is so wrong.
It is. It really is. I see that. Did they mark any of those Quran pages and collect them?
They marked 2 of them, I think, two or three of them. I can pull that up here too. I think, but that was about it. So they didn't really do too much of a job on that. Number 10, I know, was a Quran page, and I forget what the other numbers were, but it was interesting that they were all kind of on both sides. So number 5, number 6, number 10. Those are the Quran pages that you'll see in this image here. Let's see if I can zoom that one in. If you look at where number 5 and number 6 is, okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? And 4 is the actual book, but why number 10? It just seems so like out of place with everything else, where the other Quran pages were. or a lot of them are close to where David was. So David rips them out and then shoots himself? I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, was it even determined whether all the pages were accounted for and there weren't some disposed of somewhere else?
That's a good question. I never thought of that. I don't know. I don't think they knew. I don't think they knew what they were looking at.
Well, if David is the one who ripped it all up and placed the Quran there open to the forgiveness prayer,
Yeah.
then where would he have disposed of the pages if they're not all there?
Right.
Wherever he disposed of whatever he collected the blood in and the gloves that he used right on the wall.
Yeah. What paleo ate them?
Probably. Might as well.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
did that too.
I mean, you could probably look at every page and probably interpret it. Oh, well, there was a reason why this page was here, this page was torn out. But it's possible that it was just more random too. There is a lot of prayers in the Quran.
Random.
It does.
It doesn't seem like there's a rhyme or reason to all this stuff that's ripped out.
So David and family were killed as a result of a government conspiracy. Now this was the first theory that I ever heard. Before I'd even done any research or anything like that, there were all of these videos, YouTube videos, all people that you don't hear from now either, who obviously don't care about this case now, but for 15 minutes they did. They had it all figured out way back when this first happened. Before we knew anything, they're already trying to tell me it's a government hit. Within 20 minutes of looking at this case. You can compare that to Dan Hannon contacting me and saying you need to look at this. That is what I love about this group. That's what the group should be. It's more of a you need to look at this, not a you need to believe this or this is what happened. I got it all figured out. And that bothered me. Now, I don't mind if people think that they have it all figured out either, but we're actually trying to find out what happened, not just trying to get some hits on our channels here, which is ironic with what the Gray State team spent a lot of their lives doing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's discount this theory. I want to discount all of these theories. How about that?
I think if it was a government conspiracy, that it would have been done to a point that we would not be sitting here 5 years later picking things apart.
Because they know how to they know how to pull this off.
Yeah. I think that the crime scene would have been pretty clean. It would have been staged properly. I just think that a couple of amateurs went in and did this. And whether or not they were connected to the government, that's a totally different situation. But I truly believe it was somebody within David's circle that did this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the government conspiracy came in because of all the inconsistencies that were found as far as the AVP and BCA investigation. Because if you don't believe David did this, if you look at how fast the case was shut, how clammed up a lot of the people involved in this case were, like, I think she was the M.E. Lewinsky, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
where she did the autopsies, and then she left that area. And then the neighbor that supposedly saw David and then left the area. I see how it could be a government hit, because in order for such a small town police department, as far as they would go, somebody up higher than them, so like a 3-letter government agency, would have had to come in and said, hey, close it down, you're done with it, and take it out of their hands. So I think that's why, just with the rush and the inconsistencies, I think that's why the government conspiracy came in.
Makes sense.
Now, there were a couple guys who were prior military that were with David. They were friends of David. And these guys have very questionable backgrounds where I honestly think that they are connected to the government, only because of the fact that some of their crimes should have landed them in prison, and they're still walking around. And I'm not naming names on the live feed, but there are at least 2 of them that are walking around free today, and their type of crimes were extremely violent, and they should be behind bars, and I don't know how they're free. And if they're working for the government and they did this and they are still an asset for the government, could it be possible that somebody went in to cover it up after the fact?
It could be.
You have to be a really big asset, though. Like,
you have to be involved in a
really,
lot of...
really...
Yeah.
A lot of secret stuff that nobody wants anybody else to know in order for them to come in behind you and cover up a crime you committed.
Yeah.
Like that.
I can see that.
That's why I think this one can't really be discounted.
Because
there, to some extent, could possibly be some government involvement.
Yeah.
But unless we get some 3-letter agency who will blatantly say, no, absolutely not. Not because they're trying to hide something, but because it's true that they didn't do anything,
Mm-hmm.
Unless we get that, I don't know. I don't think this one can be knocked off.
The only thing I go back to with the government thing is because I watch so much different stuff about conspiracy theories and just tons of different stuff. What I don't understand is like I've said before, I believe if the government were involved in this, then David had to have known something that was extremely important, because there are so many other people out there that are doing the same type of thing that David was doing, and they've been doing it for a really long time, and some people doing things that are even more dangerous, you could say, and they're not dead yet. So for him to be killed by the government, I would think he would have had to have really been on to something.
All right, let's go to number 3. Friends were jealous and took matters into their own hands. This got 11 votes. Any views on this one?
This one, I would tie into number one where they were killed by somebody that they knew.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I had mentioned that they were killed by somebody that they knew instead of pointing out friends or family was I was trying to be a little bit more discreet.
Okay. So it's kind of
But
this is kind of the same thing.
mhm.
This might be a little more detailed where we're talking about a jealousy, and 11 people. I'm curious about what the friends would be jealous of to the point of murder, staging a scene, doing all of this stuff. That's I think that's and then how do they know that? How do they get away with this? How do they outsmart the cops too? Which is not impossible, but there's a lot of factors here, a lot of things that have to happen in order for this one to be happening. And maybe that's why the other one got more votes. Maybe that's why it was more, because it was more kind of, well, the Crowleys were killed by someone that they knew, as opposed to the friends were jealous, took matters into their own hands. But I get what you're saying. It is, you can. This might fall into a subcategory in that one. I see that.
And this is where I think that something got out of hand, and then the handlers went in to clean up their mess.
Right.
Basically, after the bodies were found, not before. I think that whoever did this did the overstaging, and then once the bodies were found, they admitted it to their handlers. Their handlers said, hey, we got to cover this at the top. And then that's why we have such a hard time getting straight answers from agencies.
Right.
Because nobody wants to be connected to that.
Mm-hmm.
But see, if you've got 3 friends that all commit a crime together, and none of them say a word about their, like, if none of them confess to it, not any kind of slip anywhere, how do you know they did it? There have been a lot of crimes that have happened where the only reason the cops solved it was because somebody finally broke.
Right.
And said, okay, yeah, this is what happened,
Which is why that's why you got to keep the pressure on. Go ahead.
And why a lot of crimes, like some crimes, they just decide to determine that a certain thing happened, just like I can't remember her first name. I was talking about it earlier. Stratton, and the guy's last name was Snyder, and she was the Playboy Playmate of 1980, and supposedly he got mad at her because she wanted a divorce because she was dating a prominent director, and he supposedly killed her and then killed himself. Well, the same type of scenario happened, though. There was too much blood on the gun for them to find any fingerprints, so they couldn't make any prints out for him on that weapon. And actually, one of the first things that the coroner actually said about it was he thought maybe it was a murder-suicide, but he wasn't sure that it could have been a homicide, but they weren't sure. But they investigated these other people that they thought could be involved, and they couldn't come to any specific determination, or at least maybe possibly didn't want to, because certain people were very prominent. And so they just determined it was a murder-suicide. But there's no fingerprints, I mean, they just kind of looked at it and went, okay, well, we can't figure out anyone else that would have done this. So this is what scenario that we're coming up with in our minds happened here. And I kind of think that's kind of what happened in this situation. They're like, okay, well, here's what happened. You know, we're not going to look at any other things or who knows what. But they just kind of said, this is it, and it's just convenient, you know, that too much blood on the gun. You know. And I've seen that in so many cases that the way I came across that is I was actually searching for cases that had things to do with, you know, the gun being covered in blood, and also just researching old crimes and stuff, and trying, you know, just trying to look for answers, you know, at different ways they investigate and things like that, and different procedures. And it seems like this happens more than we would like to think it happens.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Very much so. There are a lot of cases where they were deemed a suicide, like, you know, a wife
Kurt Cobain
comes home and
Yep.
Kurt Cobain, yeah. And for years it's believed that, you know, this person shot themselves, and then somebody decides to go back and look, or it stays open and new evidence is found, and they realize that this person could not have possibly shot themselves unless their arms were like 5 feet long.
And that's basically what happened in Soaked in Bleach. One of the police who was working on that case is part of this film, and it's like 20 years later, but he's like, yeah, you know, we should have done this, or now he thinks that there was some foul play. And so it's very important, you know, watching this movie, and this came out, I believe, during that time. This came out in June 2015. I remember watching this. This movie gave me hope that if we keep going, if we stay this course of not accusing people, which we're not doing, but stay this course of trying to really understand what really happened here, I think that is a victory, and it will continue to be a victory. Once we stop looking into it, that's when we lose. So that's why number 4 bothers me a lot. And I wrote this one purposely because this is one of the biggest things that I hear. Sorry, say it again.
Just to see who would bite?
Well, no, because there are a lot of people out there that feel like this. Like number 4. This got 6 votes of people that are open to it. This doesn't mean that they're saying, you know, but we don't know, and we'll never know. That frustrates me. That really makes me angry for many, many reasons. But because it's like, well, if you don't look, then you won't see. Of course you won't know. You don't want to know because you don't want to look, because you might be scared of where that might take you. It might shatter everything that you've thought about this case. But at the same time, it's like, but any fan of David Crowley, I'm not a fan of David Crowley, but any fan of David Crowley, this is the opposite. Of course they would want to know. They would want to figure out what really happened here, whether he's guilty or whether he's not, based on some substance. Everything that David Crowley talked about, everything that Danny Mason talked about, everything that all of the Gray State team talked about, to look for the facts. They've been telling their fans this for years. And then David Crowley dies, and all of a sudden they have no balls. It's
Mhm.
just terrible. I mean, so I put this one up here because this is one of the big ones from the people that don't want to look into this. I could probably name many people that I've personally blocked that have said this exact word to me. You'll never know, we don't know, and it's not for you to know. I probably should have added that. It's not your business. Really.
I feel like if you firmly convince yourself that we don't know and we will never know the answer to this case, then we should just go and open up all of the jails and prisons all over the United States, because I mean there are hundreds of thousands of inmates in there that'll tell you, oh, I didn't do it. So why not just believe them? You know, they said they didn't, even though there's evidence saying they did. There's more evidence against the people in jail than there is against David. But if you're going to go with this, we don't know and we'll never know, you can never, ever question anything in your life. Like, that just seems like a very sad existence, just to follow whatever you're told, no matter what you think.
See, and I think we will know. I actually think that the documentary backfired on them, because I didn't even know who David Crowley was. I mean, and I read all kinds of conspiracy stuff, but I had no idea who he was, and I just came across the documentary on Netflix and watched it. I'm talking about a Gray State, and I watched it, and after I watched it, I was like, there's something wrong with this situation. This is not what happened. I mean, I didn't, and I had never even heard of him or his family, but seeing that documentary, and I wonder how many other people that happened to, because other people that I've messaged with have said the same thing. They watched that documentary, and as soon as they watched it, they were like, something's wrong. So that in itself says that there is a cry from something higher. In my opinion, a higher voice, a higher power voice is saying, okay, people, you know, they may have made this documentary for a certain reason, but it's going to be used for another reason. And it's reaching a lot of people that see it and go, no, that's not the narrative. They don't buy it.
I'm in that boat with you. I had kind of seen stuff on the news when it happened, but I just chalked it up to, you know, he was in the military, he had PTSD, and he snapped, because that happens a lot more than people want to realize. It happens a lot. What people go through in the military is not for the faint of heart. So, you know, I agree. I went along with it at the time and didn't think of it at all until it popped. The Gray State documentary popped up on my top picks for you on Netflix, and I was like, oh, okay, let's watch this. And I've watched it so many times now. I'm really ashamed of how many times I've watched that, because you get stuck with so many questions after you're done watching it. After you're done watching it, it ends and you're like, wait, whoa, where's the rest?
Yeah, isn't that unnerving?
Yeah,
the way
where the dog is like just around this yard and it's green and he's happy and that's great, but what Did I just watch?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
I don't feel safe from watching it more than one time because the times I've watched it more than once, I've picked up on other things because I go back and I'll like try and watch people's body language.
Yep,
I've
I've done that many
figured out a
times.
lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I go back and because I was stuck on the wedding rings last week. I was driving Greg and Sophia insane about that. What about the wedding rings? What about the wedding rings? I'm sorry, you guys. But I even went back on that and was looking. Okay, how many scenes of them on that documentary are they wearing their wedding rings? Because I was just trying to figure out why they both had their wedding rings off.
Right. And there were a few images that that we found. I think after you said that, I kind of went back and started paying more attention, trying to pay more attention to where those wedding rings were, and whose wedding ring was actually found there in the living room. So I don't know. I still think it's David's. I know it sounds weird, but it's got to be
I think
his,
it's David.
right?
I think it's
Yeah,
weird that it's on the glass table and then it's not, but, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I think it was.
Go
And
ahead.
and I did see some scenes where Kamel's not wearing her rings. So, I mean,
Let me just.
you know, I think I was just kind of reaching, maybe.
There's one image
I'll admit it.
that yeah. I mean, well, because she would have a wedding band, right? So she has
Mhm.
a band somewhere. The engagement ring is usually the that's the one that costs money, right? The bands, whatever. It's not that much. So
The big rock is usually the engagement ring, and then the wedding band is what kind of
Her band was
goes with
diamond
it.
too, though.
say it again.
I'm pretty sure her wedding band was diamond too.
Yeah, and we can go back because somebody in the group had posted those photos of their wedding, and so it clearly shows. It should show. I haven't really gone back and looked at it, but in the group, and I believe those images that the person posted, I forget whoever did it. Sorry about that, but they posted directly from the documentary. So I think that's where they got them from. In this image that I have up here, you can see David's ring. So I know it's hard to see, and you can find we have a better quality image of that, but it does look similar to the one that was found at the crime scene, which again raises more questions of, well, why was his ring off? Well, why was her ring off? You know, I don't know. Like her ring, I can get that. I understand that personally because my wife does that too. When she's cleaning or something like that, or after a shower, taking a shower, you know, she'll take it off, and sometimes she will forget to put it back on, which I always tease her about because I've never taken mine off ever, and I never would. So to me, just personally, that was kind of weird. First of all, that the ring was found there, and then the more I started looking at it, like that ring looks like David's ring. I don't know.
Yeah, the only reason it got stuck in my head was because when the stuff about his fingers and stuff, and with his left hand being the one that was left, you know, and then with the missing hands and stuff like that, I just kind of found it really interesting, you know, because I was like, well, if they hadn't had their rings on and her hand was eaten, then, you know, they would have found the ring somewhere on the floor in dog poop or something. But that's why I was trying to
had
go
to
through
test
that
it all.
and figure it out, you know.
Okay.
But she probably took hers off more because, like, when she baked and she worked with all that fondant and stuff, she probably, especially her engagement ring, she probably at least took it off, because otherwise that fondant would have gotten all in her ring.
I think that Greg and Dan had done a video about how the kitchen just looked like a scene interrupted, and that really hit home for me because I never saw anything about her wedding ring being found, and I myself have done that with jewelry on my hands. If I'm like doing laundry or dishes or cooking, I take it off because I don't want to catch it on anything and break it.
Yeah.
Or hurt myself potentially, which is more likely. But her ring wasn't found, so a scene interrupted hit home, because if she was doing the dishes and had taken it off when all this hit, that makes sense. But then there was something about how it was either Sidra or a friend of Sidra and Kamel had said that Kamel and Rani were watching something on the Surface Pro. So that didn't match up with the way the kitchen looked. Because if she's just sitting on the couch, why wouldn't her ring be on her hand?
Right. Okay, if anybody in the comments at any time, if you want to make sure, if you want to join us here, I want to try to make this as interactive as possible for the people that have joined us here in the live comments, in the live YouTube chat room. We got 16 people in there. I want to say hi to everybody who has joined us. So if you have anything that you would like to bring up, please go ahead and make those comments. I'll try to make a note, and Sophia will try to remind me about that. Right now we are looking at number 5, and this is number 5. This got 3 votes. They are still alive. That is an interesting theory. I'm open to that theory, so that might have 4 votes, because even though I created this whole poll, I have to be honest with you, I have not voted on anything. Are they still alive?
Okay, this theory is a little out there, I guess. But when you look at the scene being staged and all that, and things not really adding up, like David's AT&T account was still being paid for as of May this year. Even though his number was changed, the actual main account was still being paid for. The bodies were never viewed by the family. They took vials of blood for the DNA tests from the bodies. They didn't take toothbrushes. They didn't take hair from the home to test for the DNA, that kind of thing. The way that people have been acting that are connected to this case, it just seems like we're being played. The whole mannequin thing, that the bodies look like mannequins.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pansy. Or She-Wolf, sorry. And so that's why that theory has come up. And I was glad to see I wasn't the only one who felt that way. My reasoning behind it was that David made his movie, and it happened to be what Eric Nelson passed off as the documentary. And there were so many things that were hit on with this movie. Stick with me just for a second, please, or maybe more than a second. But leading up this movie was being made around the same time that the elections were going on. It was released in December of 2016, correct? Or was it
Let me pull,
2016 or 2017?
let me pull that up. I believe 2000. This says 2017.
But usually it takes, I mean, they were making the movie during the elections.
This says November 3rd, 2017.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, they had to have been making it before it was released, so it just depends on how
Well,
long it took.
yeah,
But
we
I'm
were-
sure it took at least months.
It took a year because we were filmed. I think Dan and I were filmed in 2016. I could be wrong. Maybe we were filmed in 2017. It's all a blur, but I'll have to go back and I know I can look at one of the video that Dan has actually and find that out.
And
Wouldn't he have taken his dog though?
Say it again.
Like if they were still alive, wouldn't he have taken Paleo?
That's what I would think. I don't think he'd leave him, right? Yeah. So I think that's a great point. Throwing shade into your guys' theories.
I would love for them to be alive somewhere. That'd be amazing. But you know, this dog was like his baby. You know.
Yeah. No, I think that is a really great point. Another great point that I never thought of. So I just love when you guys bring that stuff up. This was made. So Dan and I were filmed on June 4th, 2016. Wow, they spent a long time coming. It didn't come out till November. That is a long time. I'll have to look that up. Maybe the IMDb is wrong, but usually they're pretty good about that. So that's interesting.
Sophia,
So
I
you
know
think
you were trying to do a timeline of why you were thinking that. So if you'll I'm sorry that I interrupted you.
Well, when you think of all the things that this movie touched on, we got the alt-right, which, by the way, never was a thing until the 2016 elections. But they touch on that in this documentary. They touch on veterans. They touch on what else? Oh, gosh,
Demons.
I'm drawing a blank now. Well, what I was getting to was red flag laws.
Right.
And I truly believe that everybody assumed Clinton was going to win. And she would have continued on with gun control. And that this movie was going to be a jumping off point for red flag laws. It was supposed to get people riled up and say, hey, well, we can't have veterans having guns. We can't have conservatives having guns. Anybody who is thinking about conspiracy having guns, because they're going to commit horrible crimes. And they always try to blame people on the right or people with alternative thinking for these mass shootings. Every single time they happen, you go and you look in the comment sections, it was a white man who did it. Or it was somebody who was into conspiracy theories or a Republican, you know, that kind of thing. Before all the facts come out, and then when the facts come out and it's completely not that, and after the hysteria is over, that story just dies. But
yeah, I think because like you and I've talked about it, Sophia. The longer that I've been involved in this, the more I've entertained that idea. I don't have a specific I mean, I wish I was like God. I wish I didn't have any theory. I've got too many theories. I don't have too many ideas.
That's
But I
funny.
mean, I can see how the more involved that you get in this, the easier it is to kind of see that. Um, Especially with other things that you look at in the case, like with the police being called to David because he was standing in the garage with a gun, and I thought it was a real gun. He was this crazy militant monster maniac, that just lost his mind. Um, I mean, so I can see how, I mean, it can be possible. Um, I think I lean more towards the they are dead, but I do start running down that rabbit hole at times, and I'm thinking, well, I mean, maybe they did, and maybe this happened, and maybe that happened.
Well, we can go further down the rabbit hole right now. Um, a little off
Well,
course, but if you
I
look
mean,
at, go ahead, Sophia.
I ran 3 different background checks on David and Camille. 2 of them came back with them alive. 1 of them did not. My very first one, through Been Verified, said that they were dead. And then I ran 2 others over the past year from 2 different services where they both came back alive and living separate lives.
Well, how is David in this movie Westbound? It's a 10-minute short crime drama released in 2016. How is he in this?
Good question.
That's pretty weird. Unless it's, I don't know. And even Mitch Heil is in this too. This is weird. This is really weird. David Crowley plays a character named Kilo, and Mitch Heil plays a character named Mitch. Here's the storyline. Already tired from a long trip, Alonzo Ray returns home to discover a mailbox full of legal fallout from his recent run-in with abusive cop Detective Ruby. Alonzo's early return spooks his girlfriend, who dials 911 to report what she thinks is a home invasion. It's bad enough to have another altercation with the police, but when Ruby spots his chance to take advantage of the situation, Alonzo's life is thrown headlong into chaos. Documentary-style camera work, tight editing, and frantic pacing take the audience along on this life-or-death thrill ride. Written by James Curry. Interesting. And it's not unusual for people to, film stuff and then it comes out 2-3 years later. That's not unheard of. But it's interesting here. I'd be curious to follow up on this.
Well, if
Really
it came out
interesting
after,
Say it again?
if it came out after he died, maybe somebody was just like, hey, let's make some money while this is in the news.
And it made $10,000. Oh no, that's their budget, $10,000. Anyways,
The budget was $10,000.
budget was $10,000. It's only a 10-minute thing. David and Mitch Heil made that trailer, which could have been its own film, right? That could have been a 10-minute film. I'm sure they cut a lot of footage, and they made that for $6,000. That's it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And the other really strange thing about the movie that David was making with other people is, there was a controversy about them having the Mason as the executioner, in that one scene,
Mm-hmm.
and they were asked to take that part out. But then someone closely related to him that was working on the actual movie with him becomes a Mason.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of weird. I mean, okay, you completely invested in this project where you think that Masons are like these conspiracy people and that they're the people that are gonna be the ones that take over and all of this stuff. But then all of a sudden you become one.
Right.
Wasn't there
So
some
that-
Sorry, go ahead.
So, I mean, that could go either direction. That could go, well, the whole thing was a ruse, and that's why that happened, because that belief system wasn't really what any of them actually believed in. Or you can go to the other extreme and think, okay, well, maybe someone got to that person that did have issues with what was going on, and you can take that scenario however you want to with your own mind.
Yep. Even the name Westbound. He was westbound. I think David was headed for California. There's no way he was gonna do all these great things. He would have had to have moved out there. So anything else on the theory that they are still here with us somewhere? When I talked with Sidra, she said that that would be the best case scenario, that they are still alive. She would love to think that that's true, but she says that's not.
Shannon in the live chat said, hello guys, sorry, just getting settled. I've missed so much already. Yes, they are still alive. There's some clapping emojis.
Hey, Shannon. They're still. Yeah, I mean, with the mannequin thing, I mean, there was a lot of reason that you would think that, but I don't know.
But the mannequin thing came from Judy, so
No,
how
it came from
credible is
no,
that?
it came from Colin. It came from Colin.
Mhm.
He had said that in
Yes.
his call?
Correct.
Ooh, I gotta go back and listen to that now. This is why it's good we all talk to each other, because we miss things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not about who gets what right, who gets what wrong. It is, you have to be able to come to the table and just throw whatever out there and be willing for people to just chop it down, because that's how we're going to get to the actual truth. When Dan Hannon created the group, I tried to do everything that I possibly could to keep the case going, to talk about different things, to try to figure out new ways that we could create a good think tank. And we've always had that. And I know because we had such a great think tank in that group, and because we still do, that's the only reason, I think, why certain people come after us. Because we're doing something right. And because they don't like what we're doing, and they can't counter what we're thinking about, they can only just try to attack people. So that's where it's really been great to just bounce ideas off of people, and to just kind of say, okay, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I kind of boxed myself into a corner here, because when I created this poll to see what the next topic would be, I never thought that this would win, ever. It was a joke. That's why it was one of the last. I think it was the last one in there. But this is the one. This is where people want to talk about, and this is one of the big things that they've tried to shut us down with. Where, well, you can't talk about this. You can't talk about different theories. You're slandering people. You're doing all of this stuff to people, and it's like, no, we're not. We are discussing this as rational human beings to try to figure out what really happened here. That's all this is. And it's, I mean, I can see it. I'm sure you all see it, but there's still going to be haters out there that aren't going to see it like that.
I need to clarify something really fast.
Yes.
when I mentioned the background checks, what I forgot to mention was that my sister passed away in January of 2017. I ran her background check too on each of these things, and she showed up as deceased on each one of those background checks, where David and Camille only showed up on one out of three as deceased.
Okay.
So I needed to clarify. I had forgot to add that there.
There was something that was
I
posted a while back that there was a person, there was an actress from Pakistan, looked just like
Mhm.
Kamel. It's a little bit different, but I mean, very, very similar to the point where there were questions about that too. I remember.
her name was Kamal Alam, Comal Alam, and she does look very like it. She looks like she could very well be like a sister or a very close relative of Kamal.
Right.
But that was two different people. I had done a background check on David just within the last few days, and um, I don't pay for those sites. I try and get as much free information as I can. But on um, on David, I don't remember what site it was, but it said that he was still alive. There's a bunch of David Crowleys, by the way.
Mhm.
Right.
But this one, the date of birth matched. It said his spouse was Kamel, and his age was listed as 34. But in order to get that report, I would have had to sign up for their 2-month or 6-month package, which was
Right.
like between $50 and $100, and
Well, and what's crazy is then you sign up and then you realize that, oh no, it's not the same person. Then you get the real
right. That's why I
detail.
don't want to pay for
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No, I totally get that. And then there's always that chance of that they haven't updated their data feed yet either. So
Right.
at that point, you could ask for your money back, but I mean, it's just a whole hassle, and it's just a whole big thing where I don't know, and you do have to try multiple sites too. So it's like if you cross reference all these different sites, I don't know, but I'm glad other people are doing that.
Hey,
Well, that's why,
Sophia,
yes.
when
Yes.
you look at like those reports and like for the addresses listed, where so I mean, like, do you know why it says like last seen? Like, what does that mean? What does last seen like? How are you seen? Like, I'm just
I'm
wondering
thinking
how.
that
Huh?
received mail at that address, last seen kind of thing,
Okay.
where either they had something registered at that address or received mail there.
Okay.
And then we got to think about, okay, well, it's very possible that they could have had identity theft and somebody's out there using their names.
True.
That could be very likely.
Like catfishing somebody else. That's
Mhm.
pretty possible.
Because it says that on one of the backgrounds that I did, the last one, it says that she has a doctorate and she received it after they died, or after they supposedly died. And the only way that she would receive a doctorate is if she went to school and did that.
Could it have
Unless
been like a
somebody,
yeah, like a post-death thing where they say because she died and we want to, like honor her death, blah blah blah, we're going to give her a doctorate even though she's already passed on.
none of us heard about it. Wouldn't that be something that we would hear about or they would want to share. It wasn't in the movie.
Well, yeah, but they had to cut all of her stuff out. They had, I mean, even though they kept a lot of it in, they were, they would have faced some legal problems, you know.
Shannon said, I think Kamel was terrified of jihadi law. I think David faked it on purpose for her safety, and he had tons of help except DM.
You guys are so mean to DM. Talk about his
He
acting
kinda,
skills.
put himself out there.
I know. Yeah, and that's the other thing. They always make it seem like we contacted them. No, they contacted us.
We wouldn't have known anything about these people had they not stepped up and said, hey, I was a friend of David Crowley. This is what we're trying to do for him. And then completely chopped up all the interviews they had.
Right.
Yeah. Why make a shitty documentary and then tell people not to ask questions?
Right.
I'm very salty about that.
As far as David and Kamel being still alive, that in theory, witness protection and living off the grid is easy. But when it actually comes to somebody actually said that in the comments that living
Yeah, Patty.
Dana Dennett said
Dana.
Off-grid is actually really hard to pull off in reality. That's actually really very true. It is very hard to become invisible, especially in this day and age where everybody has a camera
Right.
pretty much on their person. You know?
Well, yeah, and I would think that if you are off-grid, it is more likely that they can take you out with anybody ever finding out. And that's
Right.
one of the things where I'm like, okay, I understand the theory of David, he faked his own death, he did the whole Tupac thing, all that, he's somewhere in Cuba, he's somewhere else. That makes them more likely to be in some prison right now or to just be gone, I mean, it's just it's people that would think about that, that would really think about faking their own death. They become targets because obviously somebody's helping them. There's a lot of people helping them fake their death. For what purpose? To put them out, to take them out later on, because you can't kill him twice. If he's already dead, and if I kill him, then nobody can come after me because he's dead already. So it's just a weird scenario with the whole faking your own death, but it does happen. It's like a Machiavelli. Number 6, more than one motive was in play. Jealousy, money, and the people that committed the crimes were involved in some form of the occult. This got 3 votes. And I think Mary said she agreed with everything except for the last part. Not the occult part. So she would take that part out. There's a lot here. But again, it's just theory. We're just talking about it. Anybody have anything on number 6?
Of course, that's me, because I've got so many different theories.
How dare you?
I mean, really, I do think more than one thing was at play. And I personally think that possibly you have different people that have different motives, if that makes any sense. Like that's why the scene is so chaotic. You've got too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Not to be politically incorrect, but I just think that because you've got the email between him and someone else talking about contracts and stuff, and he obviously is having issues with that. When the communication stopped, I think there was some hurt egos for feelings, and I think there's other stuff that I don't really want to go into. But then, and I think that there's a possibility that someone that was involved in this, that helped, is involved in a form of the occult, and that they got some kind of sick kind of thrill out of this.
And see, this is where I'm kind of stuck 50-50, is that, yes, they were killed by somebody that knew them, whether it was friends or family, that it was out of jealousy and hatred and that kind of thing, or that they're alive. I can't find that extra piece of proof to push me to either one of those.
But you don't think they were part of some cult?
No, I don't.
Why?
I haven't
Why
seen
not?
proof of that yet.
Really?
I don't think they were a part of a cult. I think someone that was in at least one of the parties that I would suspect was involved is in some form of the occult, and that they got some kind of fulfillment out of it. I don't think necessarily they were involved in the occult.
Mm-hmm. They were researching it. He was definitely looking into it. That doesn't mean he was involved in it, but he was researching these things. They were going to be part of his script. If you're chopping off heads in your 2012 trailer, which I still think is the biggest mistake that he made. He made two. Having the chopping off of heads and having involving the Masons. I think those two things are very I think those might have sealed his fate. I don't think he would have put them in there just because, hey, it just sounds great. I think there was a reason he put them in there. I think he might have known more about Freemasons and all that. Go ahead.
I think he learned more than he probably should have learned.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
For Danny Mason saying that he was the one teaching David about the occult, not just the occult, but conspiracies and stuff like that, the Freemasons are really along the lines of like the main theme in a lot of these conspiracies. And for him to go and be initiated into the Masons, I find it extremely hard to believe that he was the one supposedly teaching David about all the conspiracies. He would have known exactly what they stood for and what their plans were for the country and stuff like that. Why would he go and join them?
Especially if you're associated with a 32nd degree Mason who knows a lot, and also if you're associated with that very same person and they are for a fact involved in the occult outwardly.
Yeah, exactly. And I know exactly who you're talking about too.
I think because of the writing on the wall and the videos that were released of Kamel, I think that's what pointed more towards the occult, but I didn't get an occult feeling from that. I do agree that the writing on the wall goes along with like the helter-skelter type murders, but I don't think personally that any type of demons or occult was in this circle here.
I wish
And I'm
we
glad
could
that you. Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm glad that you did bring up the writing on the wall, because further back in the comments, somebody was asking, I can't remember who it was, whether it was Patty or Pansy, but one of them had asked, why would he write the Allah Akbar, or the God is greatest, on the wall? And I do have a theory behind that, although not a lot of people agree with me. And if you go back to the notebook, and the notebook says Allah or submit now.
Submit to Allah now.
Yes, submit to Allah now. I really think, and I've said this numerous times, that it says submit to Allah now and not Allah. He has written his N's and H's very similar throughout most of his writings. And I think whoever committed the murders saw that note and misinterpreted it to submit to Allah. So then they wrote the Allahu Akbar up on the wall to go along with that note. I don't think that David wrote the now on there, though. I think whoever wrote on the wall wrote the now on the notebook.
Yeah, it looks like it.
And, I mean, that's just my theory, and, of course, everybody can debunk it if you want, but it's my theory.
And see, the other thing that if we knew more specifically their times of death, or the exact date, that would debunk like some of my beliefs and some of the occult stuff, because there's some pretty interesting occult holidays during the month of December. So, I mean, it would just be interesting to know exactly what days and like what some of the gifts and sacrifices are, which, I mean, I'm not going to go into great detail, but body parts are part of it. So it's just kind of interesting that some of the dates fall within the possible time frame, and then possible missing limbs and stuff. I mean, and you can look it up yourself, like for occult holidays and gifts and things like that, and it'll pull stuff up. That's another reason why I was wondering about the occult. Because it does. I mean, if they were killed, they more than likely were killed somewhere else or on something that was removed from the house. Because we've determined, I mean, with at least common sense would dictate, well, if someone was going to write on the wall with smells blood, they would have to gather it. How would they gather it? Where is that? Okay, and then just the lack of other evidence is just uncanny. So I would say if they were murdered, they were murdered somewhere else and then brought back there and
All right. Number 7 here. David and Camille had a pact to kill themselves and their daughter. 3 votes. What do you guys think about that one?
no.
No.
Not even open to the possibility, not keeping an open mind to the fact there might have been a pact, and she said, oh, I want to be killed twice, I want to be shot twice, and make sure you take all of my blood and put it on the wall, put it everywhere, and let's rip our daughter's arm off. How about that? Yeah, let's do that. That sounds like a great idea. No? Nobody's open to that one, huh?
You
Well, I can
just
tell you.
explained exactly why I'm not open to it.
The only way I would possibly ever entertain that would be demonic possession.
Yep. Okay.
And they didn't appear, from what we saw, both of them didn't appear to be demonically possessed. I mean,
Right. And that
I
wouldn't be a pact either, right? That would be one or the other.
yeah.
And it doesn't explain the lack of fingerprints and his DNA at the crime scene, or the fact that the bullet did a U-turn and went up into the ceiling, unless he was moved after his death.
Well, a demon could do that.
I'm sorry, I'm just not even going to play that game. My eyes twitching again.
Those the videos of Kamel where she's like talking about how she's from Egypt or something, or no, it was David reiterating what Kamel had told him. How many people associated with David and Kamel knew about those at the time that they were done? Or was that found out after the police went through them? The electronics and whatnot. Because
I'm sorry?
Okay, so the video, the voice recording of David where he's like, he comes home and Kamel's like shaking and crying and he's recording himself trying to explain what happened, and then she comes in and she's like, can I just lay here? And he's like, yeah, is this okay? Do you want to kind of help me remember? And she's like, yeah. And they're both kind of together talking about her raptured state or whatever.
They
How many
didn't find out
until
they didn't find out about it until David's father got the property back. And
okay.
I'm thinking that it was the film crew that knew about it. And that was it. Greg, do you want to correct me on this?
No. Not at all.
Just like the whole thing with the journals, too. They didn't know about any of that until the property was released. And by the way, that day one journal can be edited at any time. So David could have started it and never finished, and somebody could go back and add things to it after the fact.
But if it's digital, it could be it's time-stamped. There's no way.
Yeah, if it's digital, it would show every single individual time somebody logged in and it edited and auto-saved.
Yeah, it should.
Correct. But we never saw it. We only heard about it.
And what we heard, right? What they heard is that there was nothing there. They found nothing in there to show anything. So it's not even relevant. Any of the journals are not relevant. Period.
Correct.
But I did find something where you can curve a bullet. It's from a movie called Wanted. Yeah, it's a movie called Wanted. You can curve the bullet, and of course, if anybody knows about John F. Kennedy, there is a magic bullet theory, and apparently a bullet can travel through and create 7 different shots with one bullet. So, just saying, just throwing that out there.
And just like Paleo was sitting at the crime scene creating journals and hiding burner phones and all this other stuff too. So,
do we have anything else?
That's the magic bullet.
Anything else on the pack theory?
Shannon in the group chat or in the live chat said no way they had a pack. Kamel had too much to live for. They had too much.
Yeah, they had everything going for them.
Yeah, I think that's another good point. Is they were both on such a successful path as far as their future goes. So really, the only thing, if you go by the facts of like their financial records, their credit reports, all of that, looking at all that information, you would not think they were having financial problems. The only reason I ever thought they were having financial problems was because it was pointed out that
In the documentary.
in the documentary, those people said they were struggling. They had a very hard time making ends meet.
Right.
But that was disproven when we looked at their finances.
Right.
Mhm.
And they were saying that since these bodies were found, since when the first media reports came out, they made it very clear to talk about David's mohawk, to talk about his PTSD, to talk about his conspiracy theories, and to talk about that. It was all part of the same script. It's a staged scene.
And it
it
makes
was
you wonder.
Yeah, it does.
It's like, what were they trying to do? Were they trying to sell us on the pack theory because they were murdered and they were covering it up? Or were they trying to sell us on the pack theory because they're alive?
Right.
And they're trying to get everybody not to look into it.
So I guess
I mean,
you
it's
voted
so
for that
plausible.
one. Did you
Which
vote
one?
for that one? That they're still alive? We need to update that for
Yeah,
your vote.
I was
Okay,
the one who
good.
told you that.
Oh, okay. Let's see who. Oh, we had 5 people. Yeah, I hate when they say +2 or +48. So there's really. All right. Yeah, we have 5 people vote for that one. Interesting.
And several of those were just overnight after I made the poll.
Okay.
Or
Well,
after
good.
I made the PowerPoint. I meant to say that.
Yeah. So that's great because yeah, that was another big one. The fact that they were saying that David Crowley was running out of money and that his project failed. Those were the other things too. Those were quickly disproven back in 2015, and it was just crazy. It's just how anybody who did their research could see. Okay, first of all, where did you guys get that talking point? Because if you got that talking point from the same source, then we got a really big problem here. Second of all, they never followed up on it. It just sounds like nobody back in 2015 when they were writing those things, everything that was used years later to try to say, well, they knew back in 2015 David had money problems, that he had this. It was just, it just looks so scripted that I just don't understand how anybody could possibly talk about this pack theory or any of these weird theories other than to just say, wait a minute, you guys haven't proven anything. And I can tell you, Kamel's family, they're not talking about any pack theory, but you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that from the way that some of these people act. Number 8, Kamel's family murdered them. Okay, this one definitely was an interesting one because I don't believe this for 1 second. I would believe time travel over this one, and I believe a couple other things over this one. But it did get 2 votes on there. So I think we should talk about that because people took the time to actually vote on it. So let's take the time to share our views on it.
I don't see it as plausible, but that's only after researching this case. And I mean, everybody's entitled to their own theories and how they view this case, and so I guess I'll just end my comment there.
Okay.
All I'm saying is please research the case a little bit more, and that's it.
I think there's a lot of because of the Muslim angle on it, the fact that there was Allahu Akbar written on the wall in blood and a ripped up Quran laying on the floor in between them, and the fact that Kamel, converted to Christianity. I don't honestly know if it was before or after she married David, but I feel like this theory comes from all of the Muslim element, an interracial relationship, somebody from Christianity, somebody from Muslim, the Quran, all of that. I think all of that together would possibly lead to some questions about, Kamel's family possibly doing this. But if you look further into it, if you go further than just that initial, they could be involved, and you look deeper than that, for me, once you look more into, Mr. Alam wouldn't have anything to do with the documentary because he didn't like the direction they were going with it. That right there tells me he's got a good brain. I personally, if I was in his shoes and I saw the direction that documentary was going before it was put out, I would have turned tail and ran as well, because that was just such a shit show, man.
I just can't believe that any of the family agreed to that. And
well, if they were told this is supposed to answer everybody's questions so that there's nobody else, bothering you guys and bringing this up again, on that false hope, I can see why they would have participated in it. But at the same time, if you are participating in something like that, I would think, I wasn't involved in the documentary or being asked to be in it or anything like that, so I don't honestly know how vocal these people were with the people they interviewed.
Okay, here's a really good one. And this one only got one vote. That's sad. This one should have got more votes, I thought. Tied to David's military days. I think there's some good reason to think about that, right? It's
you mean
very.
like if he did something in the military?
I don't know.
Or
It's so vague. I guess this could be interpreted many different ways. So tied to his military days. I don't know.
Maybe that's referring more to there's a lot of different not really documentaries, but like docudramas where it's like some facts and a lot of speculation about the war on Afghanistan and Iran and our troops being in those countries, with the military mindset of you take and follow through with the orders you're given. There's, the theories that a lot of the soldiers were sent to do things they didn't agree with, but they had to follow through with these because that was their mission they were given. I don't honestly think that it could have been something from his military days, just based on the fact of how he seems as a person to me.
But
David does not seem like he would have. He seems like one of the guys that would have been sent on a mission to go, raid and kill, some small little town full of women and children and refugees, and he would have been the one saying, no, sorry, you kill me, or you go kill him yourself, because I'm not doing it. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would go through with some type of secretive, off-the-record.
But that would have put him on a list. I mean, that would have made him a target.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, it would have definitely made him a target, but I think the crime scene would have been less messy. We would have had less.
It would have been
there
more
would have
like
been less. Right. There would have been less reasonable doubt.
Right. It would have been more
Because
like a car that hit him, or like a hit and run, or some kind of strange thing. This was overkill.
A gas leak in his house that
Yeah.
just so happened to blow him all to pieces. Something like that, where you can just look at it and go, "Oh yeah, that's just a travesty."
Right. Maybe he got robbed.
So you can't find
know.
any reason why.
Right.
But he would have been aware, like, if he had been involved in something, he would have been aware enough not to put himself out there as visually. I mean, like, all of the SF guys that I know, like, they don't even have real Facebook profiles.
Right.
Like, I know, like, one guy that I know, he's a sniper, and he's done several tours, and he doesn't have a real Facebook profile. He is so careful. They are so careful about, like, photographs of themselves being put out there, their names being put with photographs, social media, stuff like that. If they're involved in stuff like that, they are extremely careful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if he did something, I mean, because David appeared to be an extremely intelligent person. So I don't think he would necessarily put himself out there if he thought he were in that kind of danger from repercussions from something like that.
Yep.
Not only that, but if he was involved in some kind of secret hush-hush thing back in his military days, would he really have tried to make a movie like Gray State?
He would have had to have been insane.
Like, I know I was involved in this way back when, but let me make this movie about a bunch of conspiracy theories.
They are trying to sell the fact that he's insane, so...
That will definitely put some eyeballs.
But see, that's one of those little pieces that if you just look at that little bitty piece, it's plausible. But if you look at that little piece with the rest of the puzzle, it doesn't work.
Well, let's say...
I mean,
Go ahead.
His thought process and stuff, I mean, like, just even the way they show, like, how he writes and stuff like that, just his thought process and stuff, and the way he took notes and the way he recorded himself and just all of what he did, he didn't seem to be, I mean, if he were insane, he had to be the most sane, insane person I've ever seen, ever.
He would have had to be a complete and utter psychopathic sociopath to have
Exactly.
gone through something
He
so
would have had to
shady
be
and hush hush.
Yeah, he would have had to have been like Ted Bundy tenfold
Yes,
to get away with what he was doing, and no one and to have no one suspect him.
At 25 years old, 24 years old.
Exactly.
And don't you think that Camille would have picked up on that?
Yeah, I would think anybody.
Probably,
Yeah. How about the people that
and
served with
especially
him?
their
Like,
daughters.
yeah.
yeah, the
Kids are
people that
like-
served with him would have definitely pointed out that there was something up with him.
And they were the ones. They were the ones when this first started. They were the ones who were saying, "There's no way, no way." And then you had a few later on, who you could tell somebody had gotten to them, and they started changing what they thought. But I can almost guarantee you, if you were to find everybody that served with David Crowley and you took a poll, I can almost guarantee, and I'm sure you all can too, what the result of that poll would actually be. But is it possible David saw something and David wanted to expose something, and the gray state was that once he makes that film, I'll tell you that, once he makes that 2012 trailer, he needs to stay out in public. He's more of a danger if he tries to go off grid. He's more of a not a danger. He's more vulnerable. They can get to him if he stays off of the grid, if he is not on social media, if he's not doing live shows. You know, if he's not doing that stuff, it's going to make it easy for them to take him out. That's what I would say. And so he's got to stay in the public eye, and moving forward with this movie, everything with that. If he were to make this movie, that would have made sure, that would have made him bulletproof. I really think in the Hollywood sector he could not have been touched. They would have gone after him, and they would have accused him of different things, or they would have tried to downplay it, but there's no way that they could have taken him out after Gray State was turned into a TV series. I think they would have had to have taken him out before then, because then there's always that question, well, maybe he was guilty. And that's all that they can really do. They can never say, oh yeah, David's guilty, the guy's crazy, blah blah blah. All that they can do is cast doubt. And so that's because of everybody who is listening to this, everybody who is on this call, everybody who has helped with the questions, who has asked rational, reasonable questions. You've all helped keep this case going, and you've all helped turn that tide, to where now it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. We will turn that tide and get this case reopened. One day it has to happen. There's too many questions. There's too many things, and the big problem is there's nothing that proves David Crowley guilty. Number 10. Okay, there was one vote on this, so we'll talk about this one. David and family were killed by someone they knew as a result of a conspiracy. I think we already kind of went over that. Let's see. Okay, so no votes for that one. The family was murdered because of their ties with the cult that they were involved with. I think we covered that one a little bit. A demon. Nobody voted on the demon theory. How dare you? A demon caused David... See, I should have voted. A demon caused David to kill his family and take his own life. To me, this is the most plausible theory. I don't want to say plausible. Not plausible. It is an extremely possible theory in my eyes. But the problem is there's no proof. And the bigger problem is, if this is true, you could never prove it. Not in this world. That will never happen. So, if that's the case, then the only thing that will prove that is to disprove everything else. So that's the only way we're ever going to get to that. A Muslim hate crime. No votes on that, but I think we did have some people in the chat that might be open to that. Did I miss any comments in the chat there about that or anything? Let me go back here. No, I guess not. Okay, let's see. Okay, nobody's open to the possibility David murdered his wife and child and then committed suicide. This was where I started. I started with this. This was the most this was what I wanted to believe was true so that I could move on and look at some other things. But there's just really nothing here. So I don't know. And there are people out there right now that think that this is not only possible, but this is what happened. They are convinced to the point where they will contact you and try to tell you that this is what happened without proof. I mean, that's just not going to happen.
Without proof, you can't say it happened. I could take and bust a plate and know that I broke that plate because it's in pieces. Right? That's the proof that I broke it because I took the plate and smashed it and the pieces are there in front of me. If you just say, oh, I broke the plate, but there's no broken pieces anywhere and there's no broken plates anywhere, could you really believe me when I say I broke the plate? That's how I feel when I hear this. David did it, and that's as far as we're going to get.
Well, and the thing is you look at means, motive, opportunity. Okay, He had means, he had opportunity. What was his motive?
There is no motive. The police have confirmed that there is no motive. They have no motive.
See,
if they have no motive, yeah.
Exactly. See, that's why I look at other areas because I keep going through that in my head. Means, motive, opportunity. Who had means, motive, opportunity? And so, yeah, he, like I said, he had the means, he had the opportunity, but he didn't really have any motive unless he was possessed by a demon. I mean, that's the only other thing. But then, if that were the case, you would have to go through, okay, did he completely contort himself and shoot himself with his left hand in the right side of the head? And how did he write on the wall with the blood and all that kind of stuff? I mean, you have to go through this whole big scenario of all of this other stuff that went on if that were the case, if that happened. So it just seems more plausible to me that other people where I could see where they may have motive, why that's more plausible. Because I see means, motive, and opportunity in other scenarios.
I would agree. Anyone want to add to that? Patty asks, how did Dan get the presents on the porch without the footsteps in the snow? And that's possible because we'd have to go back and look at how much snow was actually on the ground during that time. December 27th or December 28th, or he doesn't know, December whatever, whenever he dropped them off. But that would have been...
What was...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that would have been about 3 weeks before this picture was taken.
And that's where I have another issue with the time of death. If they had been alive in that house for another week and a half, and those presents had been out on the stoop, don't you think that they would have brought them in or checked the mail or anything? And enough, I mean, that
Right.
mail had been piling up in the mailbox.
Yeah.
If I was to drop off, like if I was to take the time to buy a present for a family member I'm not speaking to and go over to their house and leave presents on the doorstep for them, I would at least make sure they were getting them. Like, knock on the door, look in the window, call, something
Send a
to let
text.
them know they were there. Send a text even, yeah. I mean, me personally, if I'm fighting with one of my sisters, I might buy them a present, but they would only get it if they show up. I mean, maybe that's mean,
Mhm.
but if I'm not speaking to them, it's for a good reason, for one, and for two, if I'm not speaking to them and I go out of my way to buy a present for them, I would want to make sure they actually get it.
I mean, even if you don't have contact with them, at least drive back by the house and see if they open the door and got them, so then you can contact them and say, hey, I dropped presents off on your doorstep for Rania. I'm just letting you know that, you know. Or he could have even let his dad know, hey, I dropped presents off for Rania, but I don't know if they received them or not.
Oh yeah, and I mean there was a
That's
$14,000
crazy.
check. There were a lot of things that were dropped off here. You know, it wasn't just
And
these presents.
they didn't follow up. There are no phone calls, there's no text, nothing. They just left it there and hoped for the best.
Even with the mailbox, and I know you brought up the mailbox, that in here there should be two other papers here, and there's not. This is from January 6th. If yeah, there should be two other papers here for the 2 weeks after that, and there's not. And that was another interesting
And there
thing.
was a lot of controversy as to when those papers were actually delivered. Like
They
the
were
mom and the
they
paper
were week
boy
they were
and
weekly. Yeah, go ahead.
the mom and the paper boy and the editor of the paper all had differing
Story.
dates on when the paper was actually delivered. Like one of them said it was on the day, one of them said it was a week before, the other one said a couple days before or something like that.
Yeah, there were definitely three different dates given, and so nobody's stories add up, but that's never followed up on either. So I mean that was the weirdest thing. You have the mom saying one date, her son, who drops this paper off, gives a separate date. Then you have the coordinator for that paper saying that the paper wasn't even ready until a certain date. So the coordinator said the paper wasn't ready until the 24th. The uh, paper boy says that he dropped it off, I believe, on the 22nd or the 23rd, and the mom says on the 23rd. It's just it's a simple thing to follow up on to just see, okay, because that would have helped them create this timeline. It's almost like they had their timeline. They weren't looking for things that weren't going to change that timeline. That's probably why Dan
So
Hinnon has got so much crap about creating a timeline. People don't want that because then people can do their own research. Go ahead.
why why are we getting all kinds of answers then? Why can't we get a straight answer? Like, when was Dan Jr. there? Why has that story changed? Newspapers. Why does that story keep changing? We can't nail down a date on that one. Why are we encountering this so much with this case? It should be a simple answer. I delivered it on such and such date. But we're not finding
Honestly,
that.
that's a good point, because any paper has a regular schedule, so the editor or the paper boy would definitely know what day. The editor would definitely know
Right.
what day it was ready and sent out. The paper boy should know what day he delivers them. I mean, if he's supposed to get them in on Sunday, I sure would hope he's not going in on like a Thursday to deliver papers.
Well, I mean, that would have been Christmas Eve, too. That was the other weird thing. So maybe because it was right around that time, maybe that's why there was a little difference in it. I don't know. I mean, I was trying to find exactly what that was, which chapter I put that in. I think that'd be a good thing to just kind of clear up here, if I can find it. Might have been in a different. It's probably in chapter 1. Let's see, 01. Oh, first responders. It's probably here. No. No. Nope. It's got to be chapter 1. And it's just gonna bother me until I find that. Mm-hmm. Kitty.
Does she need to be fed, Greg?
I think so. She's getting a little cranky here. Okay. I was trying to find where I put that.
Oh, now mine's meowing.
Alright, I'll find it
They're
later.
talking to each other.
Oh, he does this every time it gets quiet around the house at night. He starts yelling. He's fixed. He's been fixed for years, and he just does this crap.
My cat's been
Yeah.
fixed for years, and he, anytime we have a enclosed front porch, anytime we let him out there, he'll sit up on the window ledge and yowl like he's trying to call all the other neighborhood cats. It's ridiculous.
He loves to jump up on my bathroom counter and meow at himself in the mirror. That's what he loves to do.
That would have been there. Oh well. Anything else here that anybody wants to kind of bring up as we wind this down here? I had asked for these photos, and thank you, Sophia, for adding these, because one of the things that Sean Wright had said was that the police had kicked down this door. And I remember when Dan Hannon told me that, I was like, "What? What's he talking about?" So apparently, the police, according to Sean Wright, had kicked down this door, which kind of made us, made me kind of focus on the images of this door here and to see, okay, does this look like it would have been a door that would have been replaced? What do we see here? This kind of looks new, blah, 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 but that could have just been another one of the early false things that Sean Wright had said. But that's just a very weird thing to say, that the police would kick down the front door. Of course, Sean Wright also said that the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI were involved in this case, and we know that that's not true either. Anybody
He
have
also
any
said he was
comments? Go ahead.
David's best friend. Sean Wright also said he was David's best friend, but he had to put on a public forum his phone number so David could call him.
Sean Wright claimed to be David's the Rolodex. So Sean Wright said that he was David Crowley's Rolodex, but he didn't have in his own Rolodex. David never had his number, which was another weird thing. Yeah, just stuff like that. It was just like I don't know if he was trying to bring focus on him to distract from other places. It was just, and then he made it seem like he was some type of a victim, like we had, come after him. It's like he contacted us. We didn't want anything to do with that guy. He tried to reach out to us. So
in the live chat, What Was War had said earlier, about 10 minutes ago, the Quran was not the Crowleys, and then they said Muslim women can't possess them. And I had asked, do you have an idea who put it there? And he said, whoever wanted the public to think it was an honor killing. And then they asked if it was all staged. Like, what if the whole thing is staged?
could be.
And then, okay, so they said, I think they're still alive. So they believe they're still alive, and I mean, that is possible.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. I mean,
it's a nice hope to have. I mean, that would definitely would be the best possible outcome, but
that's a crime too, though, right? I mean, you can't stage your own.
Yeah, you can't fake your own death and get away with it.
And that would make a lot of people look bad too. I mean, that would put a target on him, staging his own death. I just don't think he's that stupid. I don't know. I really don't. It's just a guess. But
I don't see why he wouldn't have taken the dog too.
yeah, that's his family dog. I think that's a great. I mean, I love that keeps being brought up, because that is that's a really great point.
I mean, if he was okay with supposedly shooting Kamel and Ranny and then himself, why wouldn't he have killed Paleo too?
Yeah.
That's part of his family. If he really believed that him and Kamel and Ranny were gonna ascend somewhere from this earthly place, they were gonna go somewhere better, wouldn't he have taken Paleo? Wouldn't he have wanted Paleo to come with them?
I would hope so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess. Anything else? Any other theories? Any other thing out there? We never talked about time travel. We never talked about the numerology, the symbology, how David had the triangle, all of that stuff. It doesn't seem like people are too concerned about that. I think a lot of the uh, more valid points were brought up. I don't know if there's anything more for us to cover.
Well, as far as all the symbolism, did he actually believe in all the different things that, like the triangle and the Masonic angle? Like, did he firmly believe in all this stuff, or was he looking it up for the gray state?
Well, I think, just my own view, if he was a Christian, and I do believe at this point that he was, then, he could have been researching that. He could have been looking into all of that stuff. And he could have been putting that into his script, the whole chip, being chipped, because that's all scripture. That's all from the scripture. So,
from the Revelation.
Correct. So, that doesn't mean that he glorified it, right? But, I don't know. I don't know. I have very strong views about that. And the pyramid, yeah, Shewa brings up the pyramid. It's, having that stuff, having the Masons, the apron, not just, and then, he had made a couple posts about Mickey Mouse and this satanic stuff with Disney. And I remember he had one post that he had a soft spot for the devil and just a lot of things like that. I think he was a Christian, and here's my theory. I think he was a Christian. People were trying to water down his Christianity, and he might have let something in that, helped whatever else happened. He might have let the wrong people into his life, and I don't know. We've all heard, I don't know if everybody has heard about what Kamel's sister has said about the physical manifestation that she saw. Do you guys have any views on that, about a physical manifestation, and how that might tie into this whole thing? If you watch a gray state, there is I think it's the very last section, and it's all focused on how Kamel and David were going crazy, and how she was hearing voices. And Alec Wilkinson's article kind of touches on all of that stuff, and they're basically saying that they were going crazy. Of course, if you've ever researched anything with, demons, anything like that, that's the number one thing that you're going to see. You go crazy. So I don't know. It's very far-fetched, but go ahead.
Well, most people think you're crazy if you believe that demons can manifest. Just that in and of itself, people will think you're crazy. I think that's why a lot of people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and you can tell, the way, because I've listened to a lot of people talk about it, and there's some people you can almost tell, that you can tell that people that are trying to act like this is, they're very sincere, I guess would be the best way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but that's what I got when I talked with Kamel's sister. She didn't even think that this was true. This sounded crazy to her, but when she said it, when she was talking about it, I just got the feeling that this was not somebody who was crazy. And when you listen to Kamel, talking about she's hearing things and she's feeling things, I don't think she sounds crazy.
Well, and she literally says, I don't know, am I going crazy?
Right.
And like I've said before, crazy people don't ask if they're crazy.
That's right.
They just don't. And so, and the other thing is, so are we saying that her sister's crazy too? Because her sister witnessed the same stuff in the apartment. So, I mean, you would have to say she's crazy too. So this was like a collective craziness going on.
It's contagious.
Must be. All right. All right. Let's go ahead and end this here. Unless anybody has any final points, anything you want to make.
What was War said? Pro MIS main core.
What's
Gray
that?
state is deep state. I don't know what pro MIS or main core is.
Well, I think when I watched the Gray State trailer the first time, that's what I thought. I didn't think that it was made by real people. I didn't think that it was made by people that wanted to save this country. I thought it was made by people that wanted to split this country further up. Now, right now, I think David. I think he clearly understood that all of these evil things that were happening, but I think he's surrounding himself with people that wanted to split this country. They were looking for projects. They were looking for things that would be purposely divisive. And I think David Crowley's trailer, his 2012 trailer, really fit that mold. I don't think they were able to control David the way that they wanted to, but I think that what they wanted was for David's movie to inspire people to protest, to riot, to incite violence. And I don't think David necessarily wanted to incite violence. So I think that's where some of the internal struggle might have come from.
Was David into numerology?
Not that I know of, but he had in one of the there's a image from the 2012 trailer where the clock says 911, and obviously that's a reference to September 11th, 2001. So I don't know if he was into numerology. I think he probably knew about that stuff, but I don't know how seriously he actually took it, because there's not a lot of numbers in any of the stuff. But it's the pyramids, I think, that really turned people like me off. You know, you throw the pyramid up there, and it's like, but he could have been putting that up there to say, look, this is who they are, and this is who we are fighting against. And I might have just interpreted that as wrong, saying he's trying to say that the structure, that the power structure, that the good guys are part of a pyramid. So it's all interpretation.
I don't know. I think a lot of these theories have pretty good possibilities, but for me personally, I just need more to be able to convince myself that they're possible.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing that you don't need something to, like, really have it spelled out for you is the fact that he has the executioner, and the executioner is a Mason's apron.
Right.
So that's what leads me to believe where he's going with the other symbolism. That's why I took the other symbolism from what he did, because that was just such a blatant. I mean, that's just like right in your face.
That's right. All right. Let's go ahead and shut this down here. Anybody have any final words here, or else I'm gonna close this down. I want to make sure I didn't miss any good comments that we want to address here. We got a lot of great comments here. Yeah, Dana says, I've never been one for supernatural, but when I first learned of this case, there was a darkness and heaviness that followed me around for a good long while. I definitely felt that too, you know?
Yeah.
Especially during those
I
early
can
Absolutely.
relate to
days.
that.
What's up?
I said I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I've spent many nights not being able to sleep because things just don't add up. So you go round and round the circles in your head trying to make them connect. And they're connected, but you just can't make them connect the way it's logical, I guess
Right.
is the only way to really explain it.
And that's not normal. You know, I mean, we probably research a lot of different cases. And I think there is something very different about this case. So, the reason why I didn't vote on any of the options is because I'm still trying to keep that open mind, because one of the theories that keeps popping back into my head is the supernatural, is, you know, the whole demon thing, all of that. And if I'm going to be as objective as I can to really understand whatever happened here, you know, I have to make sure that I keep my mind as clear as possible. And there's a lot of things in this case that try to cloud that. They try to, it's just this weird darkening. I don't know how else to really describe it, but if you've ever watched Star Wars, and if you've ever watched the I think it's episode 3, where the Jedi are kind of being clouded, you know, it kind of feels like that. It's like everything is kind of being clouded, and you have to keep it simple. You have to make sure that you're just focusing on facts, that you're just focusing on whatever you're researching, and not trying to take that extra leap, not trying to take that extra step, not trusting your own views on it. And it's so crazy because it's just you can go back and forth and back and forth, and if we're all doing this separately, it's not good. But if we're all bouncing ideas off of each other, I think that's what's going to really help us get to whatever the truth is, and just keep chipping away at all of these theories, at all of these different things, until we finally say, okay, well, all of these things might be possible. What is the most plausible thing here? What do we know for sure? And I think when we focus there, it's just planting those seeds for people in the future to really to understand too that there is a lot wrong with this case, and there is a lot more here than what they would want us to think. And for whatever reason, there's a lot of people that want this case to just drop. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to think about it. It doesn't exist. It never happened. They don't care that there was a child killed. They don't care that there were, you know, 2 people who were under 30 years old. You know, there was somebody from who was born in another country who was murdered. They don't care about that. They don't care about the fact that there was somebody who was a United States soldier who served this country in 2 of the most godforsaken wars, 2 of the most worst wars of our lifetime. They don't care about any of that. It's just about moving on. It's about forgetting about it. And they don't understand what you're trying to erase whatever the truth is, because you don't want to face whatever that truth is. And there's many people out there right now who can help us get to the truth. They can help us right now. Find out what really happened. It's not that hard. It's not that difficult, and it will not cost you that much. It won't. It's much better to search for whatever the truth is than to live in fear, than to hide, and then to hope that whatever happened to them doesn't happen to you. You can't live your life like that. And you don't want your family to live their life like that. And you don't want your future siblings and everybody else to live their life in fear. It's just not good. It's not going to happen. And there are ways. There are things that we can do to help find out whatever happened here. Whatever it is. We know that the official theory cannot be proven right now. Maybe they have something else. Maybe they're hiding something. But there is nothing that they've given us. There is nothing that they've said. There is nothing in the official theory that shows why David Crowley is guilty. There's nothing that proves him guilty. Period. All right.
I think the one common thing that we can all agree on is that David didn't do this.
That's right. I agree.
I wanted to say before we get off,
Yeah.
I appreciate talking to everybody on this and in the live chat and everything. This is really awesome to be able to put my thoughts into words where somebody else like listens and kind of helps me more clearly see what's in my head. It's nice to just bounce back and forth, because there really is, like, talking to you guys and reading everything in the chat. It's there's some amazing points that everybody makes.
That's right. Yeah, that chat room. Yeah, you guys are kicking butt in that chat room. That's awesome. All right,
What's
well.
Occam's
Mhm.
razor theory? Occam's razor theory?
Occam's razor. Let's see. I should know this. I'm not spelling this
I
right
don't know if
either.
I'm
No,
saying
you're
it
right.
or not.
No, you're right. I know what you're talking about. I think it's like anything that can happen can happen. Let's see. Occam's razor.
Problem-solving principle entities should not be multiplied without necessity.
There's like a good quote that goes along with this.
Yeah.
The
that's what I'm
simplest
trying.
solution is the most likely right one.
Dana just said that. Dana's the one who had brought up the Occam's razor theory, and she just said the simplest answer is usually the correct one.
Yeah, there it is.
The least amount of assumptions is usually correct. Yep. Yep.
Definitely fits.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem there is that the people that are staging crime scenes know that too, so they're going to try to apply this as a way to just kind of discount anything else, you know. So they're going to use that too, but we'll go back and forth on that one. All right.
And then insert themselves into the conversation
Right.
over and over.
Right. And so you can tell people that are really serious about that point. There are people that are very sincere when they say that the simplest answer is usually the correct one. But there are also people out there that are going to try to use that and, you know, create their own theories. Like a pack theory. That's alright. Everybody go look at Westbound. See if let me know if you can find anything about that. I'm curious because I thought, well, maybe it was a misprint that David Crowley is a part of Westbound. There's no way, right? But then Mitch Heil is too. That's that's why you got to find out more about that. James Curry is the guy who wrote this, and he's also the main character. So it's an interesting thing. Very similar, right? Very similar to David Crowley in certain ways. So I'm curious about that. It's only a 10-minute film, but let's go ahead and.
Do you have a link for it at all?
I mean, the only thing that I see is just on imdb.com. That's it. I haven't looked at anything else. And any of the links don't really take me anywhere else, but James Curry would be the guy to contact and find out what's going on here, buddy. Let's get the good scoop because it sounds a little awkward. Yeah, and there's no link to the actual project. I'd like to watch this 10-minute film. So there you go. We'll have to look deeper into that one. Alright, anything else here? Or else I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now.
Not that I can think of.
No?
Looks like the conversation is kind of winding down too
Okay.
in the chat.
Yeah.
Stephanie, anything else? Any final words?
I think we had a lot of good discussion on all the different theories, but
But you're going with
I
the
don't know.
time.
I really
You're going with the time travel theory, right?
No.
I
Why?
Did you see the movie The Time Traveler's Wife? He
No.
dies.
Oh, really?
He
That
dies
was
in that
a
movie.
sad movie. Oh
Yes.
my goodness.
I don't like time travel because of that movie. He ruined it for me. He dies. He dies in the movie. Oh. No, this
I don't
is
even
really
know how that would apply to this.
yeah.
Time
Where would
travel?
they have gone? Where would they have time traveled to? And why didn't they take paleo? That's my biggest issue, is the poor little dog that is just blamed for so much that he wasn't taken to this great, amazing place that
Dogs
they
can't
ascended to.
survive time travel. But
Oh, that's so sad.
I don't
bet
know.
cats can.
I'm not gonna bring up the Michael Jackson time travel thing, but the Egypt, that's where they would have went, back to Egypt, time travel back to Egypt, all good.
That's why your guys' cats are like meowing when we're talking about all this, because they know. They've got the inside scoop. They're like, yeah, guys, they're in Egypt. We've been trying to tell you this whole time.
You can go back at any time. Yep, you'll find a bust of David Crowley somewhere. Don't worry, it's out there. From Egypt back in the 8200. All right. Christy, any final words here?
I don't have any more thought, really. Just, I think it's good that we actually have these talks, because I think that when we write things, in comments or back and forth, but a lot of times things in writing can be taken out of context. And so I really think communicating this way is a really good way of communicating and getting thoughts across. And passing them by each other, and I really enjoy it.
I definitely agree with you there. Hearing the tone of voice when somebody's explaining something versus reading the words on a screen is two completely different things, because you can read a comment and in your head you might take it one way, but the writer was meaning it another way. It's all based on perception. So these talks are actually really helpful.
Yep, I agree.
And a lot of this information is very hard to put down on Facebook to explain
Yes.
it correctly. But when you're sitting here discussing it with other people, you could get it out easier. So that's why I enjoy the conference calls.
Awesome. All right, good peeps. I'm going to shut this down here, and thank you all for joining us. We will come back hopefully next week. Try to do these on Thursdays. I'm going to try to do them every week until the book comes out. That's the plan there, so we'll see. But I will keep you all posted, and thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate that. A great show. Went a lot better than I thought. I thought it was just going to be 20-30 minutes of me trying to discount every theory, every possibility. Obviously that did not happen, and I really enjoy talking about this because I think it is one of the best ways that we are going to get to whatever the truth is, to figure out what we need to do to keep this case open, to keep people thinking about it, and also, more importantly, to see what we can do to get the case reopened. What would it take? There's somebody out there right now, there's people out there right now that can help us get this case reopened. There might be a future lawyer out there right now who is still studying, who is still taking their classes. One day, this might be a great test case. There might be somebody in law enforcement who would be able to use this as a proper test case to further their knowledge, to understand when a crime scene is staged, to understand when a crime scene is real, to understand when people mess up, when investigators need to be double checked. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with reopening this case. Just because we believe that the investigators did not do their best job because they missed things, that doesn't mean that they are necessarily involved in a cover-up. The best way for them to help us prove that they're not involved in a cover-up, and the best way for them to help us find out what really happened here, is to reopen this case. And they need to understand that this case needs to be reopened for many, many reasons that we've all pointed out here. We can go on and on and on. But it all comes down to...
If anything, the main reason why I think police officers should want it reopened is to prove that they were right.
Correct.
You know, have a new, fresh set of people go through and look back over everything just to absolutely knock out all of our theories we've got going, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't understand the runaround that we're getting from the police either. Asking for certain things, not even photos of the bodies. That's not a thing that we're asking for. We're asking for clarification on a couple things, and we're getting the runaround. Why is that happening?
I like it. All right.
Good question.
Let's see if there's any final words in the chat room, or else I'm going to go ahead and shut this thing down here. Until next time. Till we meet again.
Have a great night, everybody, and thank you all for a great conversation.
Thank you guys. Yeah, you too. Thank you guys. Have a good night, everybody.
All right, you too. God bless you all.
Night.
Good night.